Hey guys, I'm Mark,
I'm Alon.
and welcome to another episode of The Next Man Up. Hey listeners, welcome to this Next Man Up podcast where we are about raising up the next generation of men because we believe that when boys become godly, healthy men, everyone benefits. This is your host, Mark Stanifer, and once again, my co-host is in the room, Mr. Alon Auguste.
Hello.
Good to be with you.
Yes.
How are things, buddy?
Well, you know what? It's still not warm, but that does not weigh on where my heart and mind is. So yeah, things are cool.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to our topic today because, well, for a lot of different reasons. But before we get to that, let me just ask you listeners again for your help this year, and we want to broaden the reach of this podcast, of this conversation, of the work that's happening here that you guys are a part of. We want to invite more folks into this. And so if you're enjoying what you're hearing, if you know of people that would benefit from this, would you just copy the link, text it to them, tell them something that you like about the show, and just invite them to give it a try? It can be just that easy. And we would certainly appreciate your help in helping this conversation to grow and inviting more people to be a part of it.
Yeah. It's an easy way to pay it forward. I always feel like if you got something that's good in your life and you're excited about it and it's doing something in your life, that's the thing that you want to, when people say, how you doing or what's going on, like what's new, like that's the thing that you want to throw out. So, you never know. If it helped you, it might help somebody else.
That's right. So thank you for being with us and taking an opportunity to invite someone else to join in. Okay. So in the preparation for this conversation, I was reflecting back on the last week, and it may be a little bit different, but not too atypical from often how my weeks go. But I found myself reflecting on 3 different encounters that I had with folks where there was just a whole lot of openness and transparency and the big V word, vulnerability. I was talking with a friend who is who's in this space of wanting to move into a different area professionally, but also wanting to continue to grow personally and to be around others that are like-minded. And I was just telling him about all the different encounters that I have on a regular basis with people that are willing to go beyond just the surface stuff or the, hey, what do you do types of questions, especially guys, right?
Yeah,
like this is not a strong suit for guys, unfortunately. And we're going to do our best today to help change some of that. I was also having lunch with 2 other guys last week. And one of them, who I don't know real well, I know the other guy a little bit better, but the second guy just remarked at how powerful the conversation had been for him. And man, we were all over the place.
Okay.
And never were we talking about the weather, and never were we talking about the sports teams. At one point, he was like, most of the conversations that I'm in, we end up talking about the Buckeyes or whatever the local sports team is.
Yeah.
And we didn't go there. And then there was a third one, a group of people in the coaching space that I had invited to be part of a specific coaching development group. And we had our first conversation last week, and it was 2 hours of people just checking egos and titles and all of that nonsense at the door and just showing up and being open.
Cool.
And I was thinking, how fortunate I am to have those conversations on a regular basis and how infrequent they happen in general. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about this idea that that men somehow have picked up over time, that vulnerability is a weakness, and just attack that head on and deconstruct that. Because I believe the complete opposite is true.
Interesting. It's funny. Like, I think that's a common thing that people are wanting more and more, and it's you can see it coming out in different ways in our culture. What's his name? Richard Gervais.
Ricky Gervais?
Ricky Gervais.
The comedian, the host. Yeah.
Yeah, he hosted the Golden Globe Awards. And I don't understand because, like, I'm like, his stick is like, he just rips everyone apart. And they've had this guy back since 2012.
Equal opportunity offender.
But this one was he went someplace else. Like, he pulled back the covers and just kind of exposed everything ugly and nasty, and pretty much was like, this is why, like, showbiz stinks. From who we support to the double standard of living, of, like, we want to endorse, saving kids' lives, but at the same time, like, we're backing companies that have, like, sweatshops and stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, we he was like, from actors, actresses that stand up and give amazing speeches, but go and do all this. He's like, just come up here, grab your reward, and go away. Like, don't use this as a political, like, and I see that as one of the avenues that we're looking for vulnerability, but vulnerability means that you're exposed.
Yep.
And what I saw that he did was, like, he exposed everyone. I mean, there was no one able to sit in their seats. Like, people were laughing, but it was like that.
Oh, that uncomfortable,
awkward. You're making fun of me.
Right. This really hurts.
I can't hide it because it's
I have
true.
to laugh.
Like, it was interesting to watch. But I feel like when it comes to being vulnerable, we're the actors and actresses in the seats, and we feel like people are going to make fun of us.
That's right.
And they're going to laugh at us, and we're going to show us how like whatever we are, like, we're just not enough, and we always fall short, and we don't have it together, and we're not perfect. You throw anything into the blank, and that makes us feel embarrassed.
Yeah.
And that's a hard place, and it's probably why a lot of people don't get vulnerable with other people, for fear of judgment and feeling embarrassed.
That's right.
To feel like an exposed nerve, so to speak, because you don't know what happens in those moments.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had, as my boys have gotten older, I've had a number of conversations with them of late around dating and relationships and getting to know somebody else. And a lot of it comes back to there's no guarantees. And part of being in a relationship with somebody is risking getting hurt, and yet it's still worth it. It's still worth it.
Yeah.
And that's just like the romantic side of what we're talking about here. But you're right. The fear of being exposed of, I don't know it all, or I am insecure, or this might make me feel weak, or like in a leadership or an organizational capacity, they might not respect me. They might think less of me if I ask a question that they think I should know, right? So much of this is how we think people perceive us, how we think we should be perceived, what we don't want others to know about us. There's just so much. And so we come to this conclusion that I just keep it all inside. Yeah. I look the part, how are you? I'm good. Right. Meanwhile, inside you're breaking apart, but you can't let
people know.
Right. What was that old deodorant commercial back from the 80s or 90s? Never let them see you sweat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like, it's like that type of mentality. And so maybe listeners, you're thinking, Mark, you're just full of it. You live in your own bubble, that these are just your thoughts. And what I would say is, these aren't just my thoughts.
Yeah.
There are very widely respected people, authors, speakers, thought leaders that are out there saying the same thing, that this is a problem. Let me just give you a couple that that I've appreciated reading or listening to of late. Here's one from Brené Brown in her book, Daring Greatly. Basically, men live under the pressure of one unrelenting message: do not be perceived as weak. I can go back through my middle school years, my high school years, my college years, and see where that message was reinforced in the locker room, on the school bus, in the cafeteria, in the classroom, right? Now, I'm not saying that that's the right message. In fact, I'm saying it's a pretty poor message, but that's the message that certainly I was getting as a boy growing up into adulthood. Here's another one from Mark Golston in his book, Just Listen. Like most young people, men in particular, I once believed that earning respect meant never showing weakness. Here's that weakness again, especially to my father. Instead, it meant hiding mistakes and covering fear with bravado. Guys, it's not just me. You, as you're listening to this, you know this to be true. The message is never let them see you sweat. Don't show weakness. Don't show to your father or to those other male figures in your life that you don't have it all figured out. Like, that's nonsense. It's wrong. It's nonsense. And I'll speak for myself. I don't want to put you into this, but I'm just going to hit this head on and say that is wrong.
Yeah. I'm just thinking of all the times that it's like, you see those movies where it's like the dad is punishing the son and the son is crying and the dad goes, "Why are you crying?"
Right. Man up.
Like, man up, stand up. And I guess that's the extreme, but there's little nuances of that as well. From like being in sports to grades to like not letting your son allow another kid to talk trash to him. Like, there's little nuances too, like that I think that we as fathers can kind of help instill in our sons that results in them thinking that vulnerability is not good. The small white lie that we encourage them to say, the way that we have them be macho among their female counterparts, like it's not good. Like we're helping them to think that vulnerability is a bad thing, and it's not. It's not a bad thing.
Now, it is, I think it's worth saying that not everything in your life needs to be shared with everybody else, right?
Yeah, no.
Even these authors, in particular, Brené Brown, would say that people need to earn the right to for you to be vulnerable with them.
Sure.
But she would also say that vulnerability or relationships require you to be open. And in order for good relationships to take place, you got to be willing to give.
Yeah.
And so, you just picture the context, whether it's at work or at home, with your wife or out with your kids, just trying to reinforce some of this stuff. Not everything is appropriate at the same time in the same context. But there is a way for you to open up and to reveal that you are not perfect. By the way, we already know that. Yeah. You don't know everything. By the way, we already know that, right? We know this, and yet we continue to hold up that facade. And I just want to encourage you guys today, as you're listening to this, to be finding ways to break down that facade, break down the walls, and try something different.
It's interesting, as you say that, I'm like, we know that we're not perfect, but I also feel that we can sometimes believe that we can be. You know what I mean? And
Or like it's this unrealistic expectation we must live up to. Is that kind of where you're going?
Yeah. And it's like, it just never works. It never works at all. You know, and I think too, like, I don't think that we are properly taught how to set up boundaries. And so I think in a sense of being vulnerable, but also not feeling that you need to share everything. Like, we're not really taught well how to do that.
How to navigate through those scenarios.
So for instance, we're taught, how are you? Answer, good.
Fine. Okay.
Lie.
Yes. Right.
You know, that's the lie I'm talking about. It's a little white lie,
Right.
You know? It's the kid who watches dad come home from work, or mom and dad come home, and we're sitting at a table and eating, and mom says, how was your day, hon? And dad says, it was good. When in fact you got yelled at by your boss.
Yep.
You almost lost your job, or you did. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there was trouble on a project. There was, you know, you're not good. You know, and by the way, there's stuff at home that you're dealing with too. You're not good.
Yep.
But you know, I've been really peering into that, going, well, what if we were taught to be like, well, depending on who you are, if you're a coworker and I don't know you and you say, how are you, to be able to go, you know what, today's a little hard, but I'm getting through. Finding safe ways to be vulnerable with people, like, it doesn't mean you have to go into all of it with somebody, but they ask the question. Like, I've been doing this. Like, people ask, like, so how you feeling? And I'll just be like, I'll tell you exactly how I'm feeling. Like, you know, like, but
hold up, man. I didn't want to know. It's just something that I say because I'm supposed to say it.
Right? Like, it's like, it's good morning. And so I'm quizzing people like Gandalf, like, are you saying that I'm having a good morning? Because I might not be having a good morning. Like, you know, so like, I love that. How was your day? Like at 10 o'clock in the morning. Well, the day hasn't started yet.
Yeah.
So like, let's get back to it. I'm being open and honest with people because I just don't want to live that lie anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to live the lie of everything is good, because not everything is good all the time.
That's right.
Like I going to church is so interesting, you know. Like, you know, it's this saying that we have like in churches where someone comes up and says, God is good. And you're supposed to reply
all the
time. And like, you know, and it's like, God is good all the time, God is good. And like, I like to stop people and be like, you know, God is good all the time. I'm like, I know God is good, but there are times where I'm not feeling the goodness.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I'm not feeling that. And if I reply to you that he is good all the time, then that is like, that's like impressing on you that everything is okay. It's not. It's not okay. And if I respond that way, I'm lying to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean I have to go into my whole story with you.
That's right.
I'm just telling you, today, not doing so good. But you know what? I'm working through it.
I think that's a fear when people like me come around and start talking about being vulnerable. Guys in particular fear like they have to load up the dump truck and back it up onto somebody and dump it all out. Yeah. Or they're going to get all of that dumped into their lap.
Like, what do I do with this?
Right. I didn't want this. Right. Like I don't want to know. And so that would be an extreme. And maybe you've got that one or two people in your life where you've got the freedom to do that.
Yeah.
But just acknowledging that, you know what? I'm really feeling like today sucks, and yet I'm here and I'm showing up and I'm going to get through. Like, if somebody were to say that to you, I think that would create such an interesting reaction, right? Like some people, or if you were to say that to somebody else, some people would be like, what just
Yeah.
happened
Oh,
here?
yeah.
Right?
Faces go like, what?
Right? Some people would lean in and you would find that there is a sincere and genuine interest
Yeah.
in what you're experiencing based on the reaction from the other person. And you might find a bridge has been created into that relationship that wasn't there before.
Exactly.
Or you might find people looking at their watch like, oh, I got to go because I don't know what to do here, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't care about you enough to stay around and listen. And that's
okay.
That's telling too, right?
Yep. That's telling. Or you know what, Mark? You might find somebody who actually goes, really?
Me too.
Yeah. Me too. Or tell me about what's happening.
Yeah.
Or hey, you want to get coffee later?
Yep.
And you know, we talk about like relationship as really being key and such, and community being key. Like you can't have that if you're not getting open and if you're not getting vulnerable.
That's right.
You know, and that's hard. I get it. I know it's hard in our society, our culture, our communities are not built that way right now.
But the alternative, Alon, is loneliness and isolation. And oh, by the way, this is a major problem for middle-aged men.
Yes.
Isolation. It's in the medical community. The former Surgeon General has talked about this. This isn't just you and I making up this issue.
No.
It is an issue. And the only way to get past that is to be willing to be honest and open with others.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Brené Brown says this, there's no equation where taking risks, braving uncertainty, and opening ourselves up to emotional exposure equals weakness. The perception that vulnerability is weakness is the most widely accepted myth about vulnerability and the most dangerous. I really like her writing. Now, she spent years and years studying shame. And shame creates silence and isolation, right? And so she has seen this play out in her work. And here she is saying that vulnerability as a weakness is a myth. And it's the most dangerous myth that is out there. Here's one from Lewis Howes. I don't know if you know that name. Local product, played in the NFL for a bit. And has written a book called The Masks Men Wear. He says this: contrary to what much of our culture tells us, invulnerability was a weakness that threatened their success, not a strength that supported their achievements. Now, this guy goes to lots of different quote-unquote successful people, entrepreneurs, actors, athletes, whatever, and he interviews them and he talks about their insights and their elements for success. And what he's finding is that their invulnerability was actually a weakness, not a strength, right? Because we would say the prevailing message is vulnerability is a weakness. Well, that must mean that invulnerability is a strength. And he's saying, no. Invulnerability is a weakness. This isn't just me talking. This is there's a whole body of voices out there that are saying the same thing.
Yeah. Wow. I guess the Superman, attire for our hearts and minds is probably not the best thing.
No. Patrick Lencioni, another guy that I follow. He's an author, sort of a leadership expert. He says this: without the willingness to be vulnerable, we will not build deep and lasting relationships in life.
Agreed. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So I've got a few in my notes here, but what are some reasons off the top of your head, from our conversation, from your own experience, why being vulnerable really is worth it? Because we've been criticizing it, saying invulnerability is not the way to go, but why would somebody take a risk here and begin to be more vulnerable with those around them?
Because, man, I guess the things that come to the top of my head is like, because we can't do this life alone, man. We can't do it. And if we act, isn't it interesting? The more like guarded and perfect you make your life, the less people actually are around you.
Yeah. In a meaningful way.
Yeah, in a meaningful way. And so when you build that house of yours on like sand, and all of a sudden a storm surge happens, and a hurricane happens and a tornado happens, there's no one in life to help you.
That's right.
And guess what? You can't do it alone.
Yep.
And so we need people.
And
so
you don't have to.
You don't have to, man. You don't have to.
Despite what John Wayne would say or the prevailing message, you don't have to do this thing alone.
And and another one is that like I think it goes back to one of the quotes that you had that you said, but basically, like, honestly, vulnerability does make you stronger, because when you get vulnerable and open and people assist you and people come alongside of you and help you to stand and to heal and to like make it through whatever you're going through, your muscles are getting stronger.
Yeah.
As they're helping you. Like I'm using this analogy, but like in other words, you are getting stronger by people helping you get stronger.
Yep.
You know what I mean? By watching other people come alongside you and give you what you are desperately needing is relationship and honestly love. Like I don't want to get mushy here, but is that mushy or is it that just being real? You just need love. Like you need someone to care, to honor you, to stand by you and such. And so that helps to strengthen you and make you stronger so that you can stand in the midst of what you're going through. Like it's a really, really, really good thing. And so, those are two things that come off the top of my head. And again, just being vulnerable also, like, when you have nothing to hide, like, you live shame-free.
That's right.
And
yep.
There's not a guy I know that doesn't like struggle with shame for whatever reason. And it's like, but when you're vulnerable, when you're open, not saying sharing your whole life with everyone and all that stuff, but when you're able to be like, you know what, you asked me a question and I'm vulnerable, I'm gonna be vulnerable and just say, I don't know. There's nothing to hide.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Like, and that's a beautiful thing to live free in that way.
I agree. I totally agree. And I would say that, men talk a lot about bravery and courage and whatnot. And what I would challenge is, which takes more courage and bravery? To reveal that you don't have it all figured out, that you don't know, or to just pretend that you've got it all figured out, that you're all together, right? Like, which one really is more brave and more courageous in the end? And I would also say that the courageous effort toward vulnerability can become contagious.
Oh, yeah.
Like the example you gave early on. You stop and answer somebody's question to how are you with, today's not one of my better days.
Yeah.
You might find that they're willing to lean in and catch some of that space to be vulnerable, right? You've given them permission by demonstrating it yourself. I think it's contagious.
Very.
The other thing that I would say is, we've been addressing men in particular here, but for the fathers that are listening, what will this do for your boys to see this vulnerability in you and encourage them to want to be like that as they grow up to be men? Yeah. Right? We can arrest this problem by demonstrating a better way and helping to pass that on to our boys. Mm-hmm. So do you need another more compelling reason?
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, if you want your boys to be better, then show them how, because they will catch it.
Yeah, agreed.
I was listening to a podcast before we started recording today, specifically on vulnerability, primarily in the workplace, but there was a statement made by the host, Donald Miller, that I thought was worth writing down. He said, "I'm powerful as I am, flaws and all."
Yes.
How cool would it be to live like that every day?
It's freeing, man.
It is.
It's very freeing.
So guys, as you're listening to this conversation and thinking about it and reflecting on your own life, where are you holding back? Where are those opportunities in your life where you've said, nope, I'm going to keep this to myself, versus being willing to lean in? And where can you begin to take some steps toward more vulnerability? Those are questions probably that only you can answer, but I challenge you to think about those questions in the context of this idea that vulnerability is not a weakness. It's actually a very courageous act.
Yeah.
And it's a much better way to live.
Agreed.
Well, dude, thank you for being vulnerable in this context and sharing your thoughts and
Sure, likewise.
and participating. And listeners, if you got feedback for us, you can hit us up at feedback@thenextmanup.com. Join the conversation there if you've got something to say. Okay. Until next time.
Adios.
Hey, listeners, thanks for journeying with us on this Next Man Up podcast. We would love to hear from you. Maybe you have a question or an idea, perhaps a topic for us to consider. If that's you and you want to reach out to us, you can get us at feedback@thenextmanup.com. That's feedback@thenextmanup.com. Again, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, we'll see you later.